call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Members present physically, we have Steve Brown, Nick Poloni, myself, Dana Powers, Lisa Hines. Board members present remotely is Jack Nicolai. We have no board members absent. Administration present physically, we have Patty Fitzgerald, Judy Marachkowski, Brian Sandberg, Susan Jarvis, and Connie Galenza. And administration present remotely is nobody. And visitors present physically, we have
Steve Squires.
Okay, and then we have Steve Squires here. And do we have, is it being remotely casted or casted here in the building or no?
Yes.
Okay, and then whomever is within the building and then everyone else listening remotely. If everyone could stand and join me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion on the agenda, please?
I motion to approve the agenda.
Steve Brown, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Since we have a majority in the room, do I need to do names?
No.
Okay, so it can be Jack saying aye
Yes.
over that and us, okay, perfectly, that will save some time. Yeah, okay, so motion carries. Okay, President's report. I just wanted to take just a couple of minutes to address those watching on the video feed, and then obviously you guys are watching too. I just wanted to take just a quick second to address you guys and say thank you for all of your comments that are coming in. It's strange, I don't know who to look at, I'll just keep kind of scanning the room. Thank you for all of your comments that have come through email. Thank you for all the conversations that you're having with the people within your circle and people who are reaching out. Thank you for doing that. Staff, thanks, just thanks. You guys are doing above and beyond, and I know this is a crazy time, and I just wanted to make sure that as a board, thank you. For those out in the community that are watching, please ask your questions. Now is not a time to be silent. Now is not a time to be by yourself, having these questions continue in your brain. You have all of us here, these board members, you have Connie, you have this amazing staff. I just ask that even if you're losing just a bit of sleep, just send that email. If you think it's a silly question, just send it to me. I love silly questions. And if it's not a silly question, then I'll send it to somebody else. So just me heartfelt saying, this is a tricky time for everyone. And I just strongly suggest that you take the time that you have to make sure that you're heard with that. Know that nobody in this room has an agenda. That those of you who, I know we're gonna get to it, but those of you who are listening from home, if you talk to one person, they're not gonna be pushing one thing and somebody else is not gonna be pushing another. Everybody here understands that this is 100% your and your family's decision. Again, I know we're gonna get to it. And just know that we are here to support you and answer your questions. We are not here to make this decision for you, and we are not here to strong arm you or share any agendas that we may have ourselves. The reality is, and we know this, that nobody has the right answer. Nobody knows what's going on right now. The CDC, anything, they're providing suggestions and guidelines, and we all within this room are making the decisions that we feel are best with the decisions that we have right now. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that, yes, I'm representing the board, but it's I've worked with these great people long enough to know that that we are all feeling the same way. So I wanted to make sure that that is presented before this long and tricky meeting that we will have tonight, and thanks. So, moving on to clerk's report.
I don't have any correspondence whatsoever, so
Okay.
thank you.
Just know that we get to public comments later, so just for those of you viewing at home. So, all right, let's go ahead, Lisa, to the treasurer's report.
Sure, we have a treasurer's report dated June 2020. In the general fund cash account, it's a negative $67,199.20. Credit cards at $7,953.11. The EBC Flex and HRA cash account at $2,857.61. Capital Improvement Fund, $13,075.80. Petty cash, $400. In the local government investment pool, $1,434,595.48. For a grand asset total of $1,391,682.80. Excuse me. I move to approve the treasurer's report dated June of 2020 for a grand asset total of $1,391,682.80.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries. Amended accounts payable bills.
So I just want to clarify, there are two separate, as it relates to the financial statements. One you approved back in June. There were some discrepancies with that, so this is a corrected version, so we would still need to approve the amended version of this financial statement. And then the other is the routine one for pay bills from the month of June.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions from last month's? That issue? No? Okay.
No.
Okay. So I move to approve accounts payable bills from May 22nd through June 19th as amended from check number, hold on a second, 68462. Through check number 201900747 for a grand total of $1,158,198.16.
So,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries. And then, accounts.
Here's this month's.
Yes.
Yep, so this month's bills, accounts payable. Does anybody have any questions?
Jack, did you already review? Are you good?
Yes, I'm fine.
Got it.
Okay, I move to approve the accounts payable bills dated June. You know what, so we have, hold on a second. Do we have an overlap?
Susan?
Hold on a second, I gotta look at something.
Yeah, it says 522.
Oh, through I was reading at 622, I just wanna look, hold on a second.
Let me check and see if those checks are in this one.
It's the ending date. Why can't I pull this up?
I got the same ones from the previous month.
Oh yeah, we're good, okay. I just didn't remember the dates. I thought it ended on June 20th, and it was June 19th. Okay, so I move to approve the accounts payable bills dated June 20th through July 24th, 2020. From check number 5000 all the way through check number 202000022 for a grand total of $795,983.62.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And motion carries. Special board meeting minutes.
We have a set of minutes from the special board meeting, June 23rd, 2020, as printed and amended.
I motion to approve the minutes of the special school board meeting dated 6/23/2020 as printed and or amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Oh, good call. Abstentions and motion carries.
And we have the minutes of the regular school board meeting, 6/23/2020, as printed and amended.
I motion to approve the minutes of the regular school board meeting dated 6/23/2020 as printed and or amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, abstention?
Abstain.
And motion carries.
And then we have the minutes of the special board meeting, 7/22/2020, as printed and amended.
I motion to approve the minutes of the special school board meeting dated 7/22/2020 as printed and or amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, and motion carries. Go ahead. Bruce, you want to read that part?
So public comments, in order to assure all persons who wish to speak to the board committee may be heard, treated fairly, and at the same time conduct its meeting efficiently, the board adopts the following procedures. In accordance with their intent of the open meeting law, the board or committee cannot respond or take action on any item not published on the agenda. 3 minutes will be allocated to each written commentary submitted related to an issue. All submitters' names and addresses will be announced. The board or committee will not hear complaints about school personnel in public session. So at this point, we did notify that we would take written comments for tonight. We did receive those written comments. The information was sent as to how to submit those. I turned them over to our board president, who will read them.
Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read them, and if there is a specific question, I'm going to pause and allow for Connie to answer. I will be stating name and addresses as part of our policy. So the first one here is Joralyn Miller. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. 22508 86th Place, Salem, Wisconsin, 53168. Hello, thank you so much for all of your hard work planning to get our children back to school. I listened to the board meeting and cannot think of any questions, as many of my questions were answered. I am very happy with the decisions proposed, and I plan to send my children in person 4 days, if approved. I just want to say thank you for advocating for the children that need to return and have many barriers to online learning. I know you will not please everyone, but giving parents options is the best thing, as not one family is the same. I look forward to hearing the final decisions, and I truly appreciate your hard work in these difficult decisions. Have a great week, Jordan. No comment necessary. Thank you, Jordan. That's it's helpful, I think, to every one of us to hear some positive encouragement. So thank you. Katie Theo, 25215 89th Street, Salem, Wisconsin, 53168. Good afternoon. I have a couple of questions regarding the 2021 school year with regards to COVID-19. Number one, can a child use a face shield rather than a mask?
So the question would be, it depends. In general, my conversations with the Kenosha County Health Department, she responded saying that the shields did not offer near the level of protection for other people in the vicinity to wear just the shield, because number one, the aerosol kind of comes underneath the mask or can come underneath in terms of protecting the person who's wearing the shield. What she relayed to us was that the shield really only works in conjunction with the mask. However, I don't know the particular situation with the student or family, and so there may be situations based on a student's needs where we would have to have a conversation and evaluate if that might be something that might be the
Number 2, can face mask breaks be built into the schedule, such as once per hour for a 10-minute session?
So again, I think we have not defined that it would be in that period of time. We did try and set up our days, for example, where our students would have breaks during the day to do, some sort of outside activity for recess and that type of thing. It depends on the student's schedule, but I believe that will be possible. However, in most cases, especially within the traditional classroom setting, it will be our expectation that our students have their mask on.
Number 3, how will the mental health of our children and the staff be monitored, as this is going to be a lot for both our students and teachers?
I think that that's a great question. I mean, one of the topics that we've had within our administrative or leadership team meetings is how do we provide support both for our students during what we all know is a very confusing and difficult time, but also very importantly for the mental health of our staff. And so our conversations have certainly not finalized on that issue, but it will be an ongoing conversation as to how we address the social and emotional learning needs of our students and certainly our staff as well. I don't know, Judy, if you have anything you wanted to add to that, or I know you've been working with our SEL team.
You want me?
Sure.
Fine. Starting at the end of last year, our pupil service team, or student services team, really started working on the SEL survey that went out to all of our students and our staff at the end of the year, and really start gauging a benchmark of how students felt, anywhere from I feel that I have somebody at school that I respect and who respects me, all the way up to I have a best friend at school, to I feel safe at school. And so we're going to continue that type of surveying just to make sure that everybody's voice is being heard. In addition to that, we're going to be working with the teachers to implement social emotional learning lessons into the curriculum, not as something separate and different, but as we're working within the classroom, making sure that we take a pulse and gauge where our students are at. Like Connie said, even our teachers too will be extremely important. Implementing things like morning meeting, and so we can talk to our students every single day to find out how they're doing and how they're feeling is going to be extremely important too. So it's going to be a lot of conversation and a lot of very intentional planning around the needs of our students.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, okay.
Judy, in your role as Director of Student Services, are there any situations with any types of students where wearing a mask because of their own individual situation might very well cause a problem for that particular student? And if so, how would we deal with that here at the school if we are requiring all students and all staff at all levels to be wearing masks when they're in the building?
Mm-hmm. Certainly, there's going to be students with disabilities who will need special accommodations, and we will make sure that we're working with the team of teachers, with the families, et cetera, to make sure that we respect and accommodate any types of needs that are possible. Whether it be somebody, a student with autism, for example, who has a sensory concern, or somebody with anxiety that is just expressing a lot of difficulties. We'll make sure that we're working with those families.
And I would add, in all of our kind of descriptions, we did talk about a medical exemption for masks if there were situations where that was necessary. I would like you to stay up because I know the next question coming, you might have some input in that as well.
Sure.
Number 4, will children with regular colds and allergies require a note from a doctor to return to school after an illness or an allergy episode?
So we don't have a defined yet. We're working through exactly what would be our protocol as students report to the office. I know that Judith, in conjunction with our school nurses, have put in a lot of work on this, and she can add to this, but my understanding is it depends. There are certain aspects where the student would be sent home, but if the student has kind of a chronic health condition like allergies, for example, or asthma, one of the questions that's asked is, are these like new symptoms that can't be attributed to a chronic health condition. So in most cases under that scenario, probably not. But I also would say that in these times, we'll probably err on the side of being cautious with students. And so there may be cases where a student has a routine cold, where they are asked to undergo testing and get a physician statement to return to school. Is there anything you would like to add to that?
I'll just add to that our nurses will be in communication with the health department, and so obviously running through different scenarios with them. Even just things like, have they been in contact with anybody recently? What medical conditions do they already have? So they'll be sharing that information between them and then making that decision in collaboration.
Thanks for the hard work you put into this, Katie Deal. Chrissy Wick, 23920, 126th Place, Shreveport, Wisconsin, 53179. Good afternoon. I watched the live stream and I love the 3 options. 1, can a family with multiple children have 2 different options? Example, 1 child on 4 days and the other child on 2 days in class.
Yes, our intent is that they would look at the individual needs of their child and make a determination based on what they believe is best for their child and family circumstances. So we recognize that there may well be cases. We've heard of cases where the online was going really well with some families and they were hoping we would continue, but perhaps for another child in the family, that's not as good of a match, so we will be allowing that. One of the things, if we have parents watching this evening, we're hopeful that tomorrow we'll be sending out kind of a Google form for them to fill out, and we're going to be asking them to fill out a separate form for each child. And that will give them the option to choose a different option for each child on that form.
Number 2, can a shield be worn in lieu of a mask if a child struggles to wear a mask?
So that was kind of the question I answered a little bit earlier. I guess the answer to that is it depends. We definitely have information from our health department that the shield is not as effective, but based on the students' particular situations, there may be cases where an accommodation is made that reflects that.
Will siblings need to sit together on the bus if they are transported?
That would be our plan at this point, and part of the reason for that is, I've already mentioned, in our last, as we were talking about this proposal, the bus is an area where it's unlikely that we're going to be able to achieve social distance. So part of the benefit of being a family member is you would already be in close contact with that family member, so it doesn't add the additional risk in that situation. I guess there could be situations where the parent believes as I think about my own children, sometimes sitting together was probably not a great option for them on the bus, but I guess under unique circumstances, we would have to have a conversation about that.
I think the administration did a fabulous job at coming up with these solutions. L.B. Hine, sorry, I'm terrible with names, Hine, 23722 61st Street, Salem, Wisconsin, 53168. Good afternoon. I do have a few questions for the 2020-21 school year. One thing, can our children wear face shields if they prefer? Also, if I provide my own mask with a drinking hole, would that be acceptable?
So I would say in most circumstances, yes, that would be acceptable. Certainly our staff are going to look to see that the mask that our students are using is functional, and it's not creating problems for the student in the classroom, sometimes in terms of if it's too loose or things like that. But in looking at each one, certainly our students will be providing masks for them, but there are some students that will choose to provide their own.
When the school decision is made and I decide what I will be doing, I will have my own supplies for a face shield and face mask for my children. I am also concerned with whatever way it goes tomorrow. during tomorrow's meeting, concerned for whatever way the board decides and the support of your educational success that will be considered in all three models that are being presented. Thank you for your time. Another question? Busing company, okay, so will there,
I think the same question, the
with
siblings
the
riding
siblings.
together on the bus, which I think we already answered. The answer would be yes, probably.
okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Elby. Okay. Ashley Jorgensen, 9012 222nd Avenue, Salem, Wisconsin, 53168. Good morning, Dr. Valenza. I couldn't find the email for the questions for the board on the proposed reopening plan, so I am sending to you, sorry. I have children going into 8th, 6th, and 3rd grade this year. I appreciate that so much time has gone into the options for families, although I do think for the sake of the teachers, it would be easier to have only the full-time option or the virtual option. I am not sure why we need a blended option with students coming only 2 days a week. I think planning for teachers and administrators would be easier with only 2 options. We will be choosing the full-time option if approved. I do think that if the blended option is used, then masks should be required for all teachers and students in the blended classrooms. It seems that no masks or optional masks could increase the transmission to others, and if everyone else needs to wear one, then everyone in the building should be required to wear a mask unless eating or outside. As a healthcare provider and educator at a university, I am wondering why a pay freeze is not an option for teachers to help fund the additional money needed to reopen and keep staff and students safe. Our healthcare workers have taken pay cuts and benefit cuts while working overtime and even been furloughed during the past months. Our university pay has been frozen and our match opportunities also frozen for our retirement on a temporary basis. In an effort to help keep jobs for teachers and staff, I feel that this is a small sacrifice during these times and should be considered. I'm just going to keep reading because I haven't seen specific questions, right?
You might want to be a little bit louder. I'm having a little bit of
I'm
trouble.
so sorry.
Oh,
I didn't even, okay. While my children do participate in band, I was a little concerned that this was a concern of one of the board members. Singing and using instruments is a huge way to spread COVID, and I would personally prefer if band was not an option for the semester in an effort to decrease the spread and keep kids safe since masks cannot be worn during these activities. Finally, I was not at all happy with virtual learning this past spring. The lack of effort put in by some teachers was really shocking to me, especially after a survey came out asking for feedback. While some teachers tried to improve virtual curriculum, some did not. Having a child write 5 to 10 sentences a week about a topic is not my idea of a well-planned language arts lesson or practical use of his time. The whole curriculum could have been written in about 20 minutes for the whole time they were out. What was this teacher doing with her time? I feel like my child regressed during this time as he was kept busy for maybe an hour a day with busy work and little to no guidance or teaching on the school's behalf. He was not engaged and not interested in learning. Since things were last minute, I didn't expect it to be great, but I was definitely disappointed. I think it was mentioned that students in higher reading and math groups will still be able to participate at that level. Obviously, I do not want my child repeating material they learned last year, so I would like to confirm that.
So that is our plan, specifically with math as it relates to students who are accelerating into the next grade level. And that we're working through some of the kind of aspects of our reading program, so I can't be as solid on that. But we are aware that that is a desire on the part of some of our parents.
As a taxpayer and parent, I expect Salem to meet or exceed standards for educating my children and teachers to be engaged and invested in the learning process, even if it is virtual. I appreciate you sharing my feedback with the board. Thank you, Ashley Jordan. Gergen. Sorry. Terrible at that. Sorry. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you to everyone. Obviously, obviously you can see that, these were presented in, what you'll see in the agenda, the appropriate way that we're accepting those by 4 p.m. Obviously, you can see that they were read in detail, and answered in detail. There were, many questions that either came directly to Connie or even Connie and the board, and know that those were also, read, and Connie, answered at least the ones that I was on specifically to each one. So just kind of mirroring my comments from earlier, send in your questions, chances are somebody else has the same one.
And the only thing I would say is that in looking at some of the public comments, after contacting the families individually, there were some that referred to some information about students that we felt uncomfortable talking about in public, and received their permission to remove that from those public comments. So just in case there's a question at some point, they were not exactly as read, but we received the writer's permission to amend them, so on.
Thank you. That's very important. Action items, kind of.
Okay, so we have the big action item on the agenda this evening, which is consideration of the 2020-2021 school reopening plan. I do want to go over some of the important aspects, but not at the level of detail we went through at our presentation, because I know the board had already been presented to. But for those that are listening for the first time this evening, I did want to go over a couple of the main key points. First of all, being the process, meaning we did kind of in June, we started with the staff debriefing, discussing what we learned from 2019 and 2020. We surveyed families and staff and looked at that information very carefully. July 1st, we had our new leadership team structure in place, and that was when we really went into the heavy-duty planning around our proposal. In July, we had the ongoing weekly meetings with Kenosha County Health Department, continued meeting as a leadership team to go over feedback, determine our values as a leadership team, and come to agreement on a tentative structure to propose. We've been involved in ongoing collaboration with local districts, both regionally and then very local, and met with small teacher teams to discuss the proposed structure, and then we finalized our proposal. As you know, on July 22nd, we had a board information discussion session. July 23rd, we sent out family notification of the proposal with a detailed kind of presentation. July 28th, that is this evening, we're requesting board approval. And then if we receive approval, the window of July 29th through August 5th, we would be asking our families to choose the option that they prefer. Again, just so everybody's aware, we are offering a 3-option proposal, meaning a parent can choose which of the 3 options they prefer for their child. This is with the exception of 4K, which is a 2-option. The 3 options are that traditional in-school learning, again, not exactly as we've done in the past, so 4 days per week. Number 2 would be the blended learning, which is that combined in-school and virtual learning, 2 days here on site and the remainder of the week off-site doing online, and then a fully online virtual learning. Just a reminder to families, once we ask for your selection, you must commit for the semester. There may be some very unique situations where a change would be made, but it would be very rare and under extenuating circumstances. All of the options do require a full day of staff planning and professional learning on Wednesdays. These virtual Wayfaring Wednesdays would still engage our students in online activity, but the activity would be student-directed and enrichment or remediation oriented. Under this proposal, masks may be mandatory in certain circumstances based on an activity or option choice, unless, again, as we talked about earlier, a student has a medical exemption from wearing a mask. Just briefly, 4K is a little different, and this is a big change for our 4K families, so I want to make sure that they understand this change. The only options are between the traditional in-school learning and the fully online virtual learning. However, in changing from the past, in the past, they would attend 5 days per week for half days. Under this proposal, our on-site students would attend 2 full days per week. So either Monday and Tuesday or Thursday and Friday. Teacher and teacher assistant would have up to 16 students in this classroom, so there would be 2 adults in that room at all times. Teachers will place students into play groups of 4 or 5 students. They will be able to rotate through play. We had long discussions around the concept of play, and the Pediatric Association really strongly recommends still creating an environment where students learn through play. And then masks would be mandatory when traveling throughout the building and in play groups, unless the health department mandates at all times, which would be a possibility. You can see just a picture of more of a spread out traditional 4K. In the 5K traditional, this would be again the 4 full days per week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Teacher and teacher assistant would have up to 20 students. We have very spacious, nice sized 5K classrooms. Again, 2 adults in the building or in the classroom. Again, placed into play groups, and then again, masks would be mandatory when traveling to the building or in the play groups. You can see kind of a traditional kindergarten classroom. This is for the bulk of our students. Again, students attending on-site 4 days per week. Classroom sizes here will typically be in that 16 range. There is one grade level where it might creep up to 20, but we would have significantly larger classrooms for that type of a setting. Students would pretty much stay with their homeroom teachers for the majority of the day to limit exposure. All students at the entire grade level would share kind of the same core class schedule. And in this situation, masks would be mandatory at all times unless there's a medical exemption. That includes within the classroom. Now, I guess I shouldn't say all times. So for example, when kids are having physical education, they would not be required to wear a mask. In most cases, they would be outside. Obviously, when they're eating lunch, they would not be required to wear a mask when they're out on recess.
What about all staff in the building, as far as masks?
So all staff will be required to wear masks in the building. You can see the classroom much more spread out than you're probably used to seeing. And again, in most cases, I want to just share, in most cases, we're right at that 6 feet, maybe 5 to 6 feet. There's definitely space. But again, there's 2 reasons why to have a mask within that environment. One reason for the 6 feet of space, but the other is for the overall air content when you have students in there for a significant period of time in that classroom. And so because that would be the case, that would be why we would require, because of the number of students in that square footage. 6th through 8th grade, again, the 4 days per week. Classroom sizes ranging from 16 to 18. So what it will be different for our 6th through our 8th graders is that they will be staying with a homeroom teacher for the majority of the day. That doesn't mean though that the homeroom teacher will be their direct teacher for all of those classes. So in other words, there still will be a separate math teacher, there will be a separate English language arts teacher, but the teacher that is teaching at that time will be streaming into the other homerooms where the students will be participating in the class, and the homeroom teacher will be providing support, answering questions, helping keep kids on task for the students that are taking that particular class at that time. Again, all students at the entire grade level would share the same core class schedule, and masks would be mandatory.
Connie, can you explain in the middle school scenario, if there is an accelerated language arts or English student or accelerated math, how that would differentiate them in the core homeroom class? So if that math class is being streamed into the homeroom, how do they, you know, if there are students at different levels, how are you going to address?
So we're working through that right now, but in most cases, the room would be set up where the student who's streaming into the other class may be in a back corner of the room, would have their Chromebook and would have a headset so that they could participate and hear what was going on in the class that they were streaming into. We are working to try and come up with a little different scenario for our 8th graders in terms of algebra. Under that circumstance, those students that are taking algebra may actually go, we talked about our LGI, which is a much larger room where we can spread kids out, and then streaming into the LGI for those students there. We have not worked that out completely yet.
You mean the high school, for the high school algebra?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So we haven't worked out all of the details, but the goal is still to, or the plan is still to allow that opportunity for students to accelerate. As it relates to English language arts, that is a little bit different. In talking with our English language arts teachers, they have felt pretty confident in being able to offer an enriching curriculum for those students who need to be able to advance. So I can't guarantee at this point that there will be a separate high-level English language arts class, for example, but our teachers have had the discussions around making sure that they need to differentiate their curriculum and provide enrichment for our students who are at a higher level when it comes to that. One of the other things I'll mention is that goal for the Fridays being, or I'm sorry, the Wednesdays being that Wayfaring Wednesday to provide enrichment opportunities for those students who are accelerated and looking at needing kind of a higher level of curriculum. So that may be another way to address that.
So you see that as happening in, during that time period when English is being taught or math is being taught?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
inside the.
I mean, and we intentionally are running all 3 grade levels math at the same time.
Right.
So that, for example, a 6th grade student could participate in 7th grade math. A 7th grade could participate in 8th grade math. Did you want to add anything to that, Ryan?
No, that was really all I was gonna just bring up, how we have 6th through 8th at the same time, so that 6th grader who's in 6th grade that's streaming in would just stream with that 7th grade teacher, that 7th grade teacher with, or that 7th grade student then streaming with that 8th grade teacher.
And then again, if it would be, let's say that it would be a student who's completely online, it would be a similar scenario where they would then be streaming in with the teacher who's teaching that grade level math.
Mhm.
Okay. So again, you can see a little bit different configuration for a little bit of an older student. We'll have some of the shields in between when we have students sitting at tables. And then online, sometimes the online is where I see a little bit of confusion on the part of some of our parents, or the blended online. Our goal under the blended would be that students would have 2 days on campus and 3 days virtual, or they may choose total virtual. What we'd be looking at to typically assign a teacher 20 students. It could be, let's say for example, that we have 20 students who choose total online. We would likely dedicate a full-time teacher to those 20 students at a grade level. But let's say that we have 6 that want total online, and we have another 14 that want blended. So what that would look like would be 7 of our students would come in on the Monday and Tuesday. The class would stream both to the online students and the blended students who are not in session that day. And then on the Thursday, Friday, you'd have the flip of that, where the teacher would be streaming to the other set of 7 students, all of the online students, and those students who were in session on the Monday and Tuesday. So again, the total would still be in that 20 student range, so it wouldn't be like we'd have an online teacher that has 40 kids. The goal would be to keep that right at the 20 mark. If we have enough, let's say we have 20 students in blended, it would likely just be the teacher with those 20 students, 10 part of the week, 10 the other part of the week. If it's kind of a mix of online, it could be that kind of it just depends on what our numbers look like, right? But either way, there's no question whoever that teacher is will need to be comfortable both being on the camera and then working with technology and addressing and working with those students. Again, making every effort to have families attend on the same schedule. However, just to clarify, it doesn't need to be that way. I've actually had some parents who said it would work better for me if one of my children attended on Monday and Tuesday, the other child attended on Thursday, Friday. So it very much depends on the circumstances. So we would try and accommodate that in either situation. In this situation, there will be some flexibility around masks, and again, this is always open to change. I want to be clear that this is the initial start, but this could change based on Kenosha County or a determination that we see a significant increase or concern around coronavirus. However, in this case, there may be situations where the student is sitting at their desk, they're not engaging with the class, they may be allowed to remove their mask during that period of time in that classroom setting. Again, that setting, if you take a look at the classroom, we can get well into that 6-foot range, a significantly less number of students. You can see here I have it set for 10 students. Very possible with looking at our online kids as well, it could be more in that range of 6 or 7. But definitely fewer kids in the classroom, more space for the students. You see there would be a kindergarten classroom, significantly kids more spread out, much fewer kids in the classroom. And then we already talked a little bit about virtual. Again, our goal under virtual, I know somebody had alluded to some concerns around the virtual or online instruction. In this situation, our online students would get the same instruction as our students who are present here in school. Now, is it going to be exactly like if you were sitting in the classroom? Clearly it won't be. But the actual direct instruction that will be taking place, all of our students, whether they are online or blended, will get that instruction. I did want to just touch a little bit on teacher planning and preparation because it's key for that Wednesday. We definitely have parents who've asked why the Wednesday. You know, certainly cleaning the building is an aspect, but that's a small aspect of why we made the decision. The major reason we looked at it is that if you think about the programming that we just described, it is true that our teachers will be working with kids who are blended, working with kids who are doing online, working with kids who are in session, trying to provide for their social emotional learning needs in addition to their academic learning needs. And co-planning with their teams are going to be essential during this time to try and really make sure that all 3 of those options, our students are receiving a quality education. Our goal is to make sure that a student who chooses online isn't getting a lesser quality of education. The student who chooses blended would be getting a lesser quality. And so in order to accomplish that and to keep our teachers so that the students are not moving from classroom to classroom, going to all of their specials, or staying within their homeroom, trying to deal with school entry procedures with students, school exit procedures, our teachers will literally be on working with students most of the day, short of a duty-free lunch. And so there's no time then during the day for them to do any kind of planning, for them to be able to follow up with parents, for them to be able to do some of that checking in with other professionals within the building. So that's why that Wednesday is so important under this model. So, we're making a recommendation that the board approve the 3-option 2020-2021 school reopening plan. This does include the subsequent posting of some additional temporary positions, that's to reduce our class sizes, and the adjusted 2020-2021 calendar to reflect teacher planning and preparation on Wednesdays.
I move to approve the 3-option 2020-2021 school reopening plan, the subsequent posting of additional temporary positions, and the adjusted 2020-2021 calendar to reflect teacher planning and preparation on Wednesdays.
So moved.
And I just also want to remind everybody, before you take the vote, that the Department of Health supersedes this vote. So if something would change, you know, if the Kenosha County Health Department, state of Wisconsin would make a decision different, that would take precedence over this decision.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To
Right.
everybody.
Thank you to everyone, thank you to all the administrative staff and everyone for this.
What,
I think I speak for the administrative team in that we really appreciate your confidence in us. This is going to be difficult to do, but we appreciate your confidence in having us move forward with this recommendation. So I'm going to turn it over to Susan, our business administrator, to share a little bit about some of the amended budget changes. I will just kind of preface this in that this is a process that is typically done every year. You start out at the beginning of the year with a predicted budget, and then things change significantly. I think there's no better explanation for that than this year in terms of how things have changed. But I would like her, under law, you do have to, as a board, approve the amended budget, so I'd like her to take over and share with us a little bit about that.
So in order to present to you the amended budget, what I used is the original amended budget from 10/29/19.
Hey Susan, would you mind just sitting?
Oh, sitting up there?
Is that,
Okay.
just so you're on, people know who is speaking? Thank you.
Okay, I used the original format that you approved the budget on the 3rd of October, and then again, the amended budget on the 29th of October in 2019. This year is a little different, but we always do a amended budget closer to the end of the year to put it more in line with what our actual expenditures have been. So what I did is I listed the audited 2017-18, which you saw at the original meeting, the unaudited 18-19, the budget for 2019-20 that you amended on 10/29, and then the suggested amended on 7/28/20. Now, the main reason for doing the amended budget tonight is to include a $400,000 transfer to Fund 46. And the reason for that is if we leave it in and it adds to the fund balance, we are not aided on that amount. Part of the original reasons we had that $400,000 in the general fund was to take care of maintenance issues that desperately needed to be taken care of. But because of the shutdown and not hearing whether or not we could work on those maintenance projects, and then of course we're waiting for the facility study to come through, we didn't get to all the projects before the end of June. So we got quite a few of them done, but some of them won't get done until this summer, or maybe perhaps after the facility study is over. We also changed the debt service because we prepaid the Fund 39 debt, so that is free and clear now, and we saved money on that, so that changed a little bit. And then the second slide that I've got there is the actual budget and the year-to-date expenditures as we have it right now. There will still be some more expenditures trickling in, such as utilities or remaining supplies. Not too many, but this is where we're standing right now with the year-to-date expenditures, including that capital projects fund. And if you take a look, if we transfer the $400,000, we will still end up with a fund balance of 15%. We originally budgeted for a 12% fund balance, but due to the shutdown and the lack of being able to do the things we wanted to get done this year, we will have enough to put into the fund balance to pull it up to a 15%, even with the $400,000 transfer to the capital projects fund, which will handle multiple projects in the coming year to take care of the building.
The ending fund balance that you have on the sheet, that the 2.2, does that include the 400,000 transfer?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Now, these are all unaudited, the auditors don't even come in until August. The majority of the products have come in, we're still waiting on some, but I actually put those into the budget already. And I don't foresee that it's going to change anytime soon, at least not a great deal. If we don't get some of the merchandise in, like we had ordered some Chromebooks 3 months ago? 3 months ago, and they are still on back order. So those I will actually have to transfer to 2020, 2021 expenditures, and they will need to be removed from our books.
Yeah, can you pay, I mean, if you don't physically pay for goods or services before, you have to do it in that calendar, in that fiscal year, right?
Yes.
Yes, we do. So even with utilities coming in, I mean, this should be pretty final, right? I mean, you're not.
We have utilities coming in all the way through the end of July.
And
So-
you can put those even.
Yes, you can put those in.
Okay.
It's just a wait time between getting the invoice and paying them. So some of the items that we had to get right away, like a lot of the PPE, the cleaning supplies, anything that we did maintenance-wise that we had to call somebody in, if they haven't billed us yet, we know it's coming, but they haven't billed us yet. If it belongs in the 2019-20 school year, that's where it'll go. Now, once the auditors come in August 10th, we're done. No more can go in there. He probably won't let any more in there unless we've already made some type of journal entry in order to record it. So, and there's still state money that's coming in. We haven't finished up assigning all of the funds to all of the grants. So that will be added into this budget as well once we get around to doing that. But what I wanted to speak about a little bit is the reason why these decreases, 100,000, function 100,000, which is instruction. The decreases were due to staff resignations, co-curriculars being canceled, substitute usage down, training down due to canceled conferences. There were some virtual conferences, but it's at a much lower rate than a conference, and the hotel rooms and travel expenses that go into that. Supplies not needed, saving $42,000. This is more along the lines of general supplies, not maintenance supplies, not PPE supplies, just general supplies. WRS savings due to the payoff of the unfunded liability. And then there's the health insurance savings that we actually budgeted for 17% back in October, and around December is when we found out that we were going to have 12%. So there is a little bit of savings in that. Function 200,000 increases were some of those maintenance projects that Steve got around to and he'll talk about later. Technology costs, like the additional Chromebooks that were purchased during the shutdown and the software updates that we needed to get to support the online learning. We also received an additional amount of $7,061 in common library aid. And then the function 400,000 increases were for PPE and cleaning supply increases, the transfer to Fund 46, and then the WRS unfunded liability that we paid off, which will eventually save us $100,000 next year's budget, which is heavily needed. The other changes was the debt service, prepaying the debt saved us $20,000. And like I mentioned, the capital funds, we'd like to transfer $400,000 into that fund this year so that it is aided. And it will definitely be used next year once the facility study comes in and if we're not shut down again.
So what we're asking is consideration of approval of the amended budget, and then also to transfer those funds to the long-term capital improvement trust fund. You can see the actual notice that would be published. Our recommendation in seeking a motion would be to approve the amended budget to include expenditure differences and transfer to Fund 46, Long-Term Capital Improvement Trust Fund.
And I want to note that the actual expenditures for the general fund budget did not change. It just shifted to the areas that it was needed. So the overall amount of $14,889,157 that was approved at the original amended budget on 10/29, it's still the same bottom line. It's just been shifted in the right areas.
Is there a chance that this gets retooled again if the Department of Health shuts us down completely? Will we have to come back and re-look at this again in the future? If our option gets shut down due to factors we can't control?
So this would be last year's budget, so
Okay.
we wouldn't be able to amend that.
Okay,
I think the one question could be related to additional expenses next year.
right.
Once a decision is made to put the $400,000 into the long-term capital improvement fund, it must be used for those types of projects, so it must be used for maintenance.
Okay.
So in other words, you can't go back into that and pull it out to purchase or pay for additional teaching staff. At the same time, again, this was from last year's budget. I feel, based on the budget that we have and the leeway that we have going into our fund balance, that we're positioned well to kind of withhold or withstand the next year's budget.
Okay.
On a positive note, I have not heard anything at this point about a budget amendment that would reduce the state share coming to us as a district, so I feel very confident about that. I think that there is a recognition on the part of the legislature of the need for that. Following year, I have no idea. But I do believe that we will be in a good enough situation that transferring this $400,000, which we told the community we would be using to update or maintain our facilities well, does not put us in financial peril.
And if I were to show you the details of the expenditures this year, you would see approximately over $500,000 was spent on projects that could have actually been from the capital improvement fund. So this coming year will be the first year that we can actually withdraw from that fund. So you can deposit up until the end of this month, and we can withdraw it right away for anything that's on the long-term capital improvement plan.
That's great.
Yep.
And that was the whole goal of the facility study, is to establish what were those areas that we needed to be looking at and what were the expenditures that were initially the most important that we do, and then going forward.
Okay, I move to approve the revised 2019-20 budget as presented, which includes a $400,000 transfer from the general fund to the capital improvement fund.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Jack. Motion carries.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
So each year, annually, we do have to actually take action and approve the 2019-2020 Pupil Transportation Report. It's a report that includes Salem students transported and non-public school student transportation as required by law. It does not include specialized transportation, so that would be a separate fund. That would be for our special education students, for example. So as you can take a look, I think that this does kind of a nice job of showing what we're up against in terms of transporting our students. If you recall, one of the things I said is in the kind of uniqueness about Salem is we are cornered on two sides by major highways, which significantly increases the number of students that we're required by law to transport because of living in a dangerous traveling area. And so you can see that 239 students fall within that 0 to 2 miles, which typically you would not have to transport, but because of that specialized area, we are required to transport. You can see in the over 2 to 5 miles, the vast majority of our students fall in there, 517, and then 16 fall in that over 5 to 8 miles. So you can see a fairly, I mean, in many ways, a pretty condensed district. It doesn't mean those routes are necessarily short. It just means that most of our students live fairly close to our school. So again, the total for regular school bus rider count, not including special education students, is 772 students. So I would ask, because we're required by statute to approve the 2019-2020 pupil transportation report as presented.
I move to approve the 2019-2020 pupil transportation report as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries.
Hey, have we ever done this before? No.
I was just thinking that actually.
I have never
Never, ever,
seen
ever.
this before.
Well, I'm glad we have done it this year.
For sure, but, wow.
And thank you, Dr.
Use my
Valenza.
information.
And thank you for having that approved and on our agenda. Thank you.
There may be a
State
couple other
statute.
this evening that will be approved. So we're asking you to
Sorry,
take
yeah.
action on our 2020-2021 school fees. This was a really unique year to recommend school fees because so much of kind of what we're trying to do is pretty fluid. You can see both the 2019 and 2020 fees, and then going into this year what our recommendation is. And so our 4K fee is the $20. We're recommending that stay the same. Our kindergarten through second grade registration is $35. We're recommending that stay the same. In the past, the 3 through 5 registration included kind of a student notebook, if you will, and we determined that really was part of our overall curriculum, so we weren't going to be charging students additionally for that student notebook. So dropping actually the fees for our 3 through 5 down to $35, and then the same kind of reasoning behind our 6-8 registration, so going from $55 down to $50. And then just reminding families that we do allow families to request a waiver based on financial circumstances of those fees. The skating fee at this point, we're not going to collect that because I can't guarantee there's going to come a time where kids are going to be able to go skating. And it is a very difficult situation to go back and refund all of those students for skating if we don't go. So
What about those that paid 19-20 school year for skating?
If they have requested refunds, we have issued them. All 8th graders that paid it, that didn't get to participate, and anyone who paid for a field trip and didn't get to participate, we either refunded them or they had requested refunds. Anybody can contact the business office and let us know that they would like to have a refund on those field trip
Otherwise,
fees.
is it a credit?
We
or
just
it's
leave it in there
just-
as a credit.
Okay, got it.
And that credit can be used for anything that a student might be charged for?
Absolutely, if a parent would
Including
like
lunch?
to, including lunch, if the parent would like to shift those funds over to whatever balance they may have, through the lunch program or whatever, they can do so.
Okay.
If they have a credit and they wanna pay towards this year's registration fee, that's fine,
Okay,
we can do that as well.
very good, thank you.
So then another change we're requesting, in the past, we have required our students to get a particular gym uniform. It had Salem on it. It was a particular, we've been having a lot of conversations as an administrative team around student equity issues and that kind of thing in terms of requiring students to purchase a gym uniform when in reality wearing a pair of physical education shoes, a pair of shorts or sweatpants and a t-shirt is perfectly appropriate for students under those circumstances. So we're moving away from requiring a specific gym uniform from our students. The other reason for that is we won't be having students go into the locker room to change for gym, so we're gonna have to work a little differently with that. We do have some leftover gym uniforms, so if there are parents that would like to purchase a gym uniform, it's certainly, we have some available, but we're not going to require a unique, or at least our recommendation is to not require a unique gym uniform. The technology consumables is a fee that in the past probably looked a little different. It is not, so under statute at this point, it is not, you're not able to charge families for access to technology. In the past, we had kind of a hard case that attached to it that families were charged for. But the actual access to technology, a school district cannot charge families for that. And so what we're doing is we're proposing that there not be a technology fee. However, you know, those Chromebooks run, what, about $294? Is that correct, Dan?
Right, 250 is.
About $250. And we recognize that families may feel uncomfortable that if their child were to break that Chromebook, then of course they would be charged the fee. So what we're offering for our families is insurance, and that is a $25 fee for insurance that a parent can choose to have. And what that would mean is the first time a child breaks a Chromebook, then there would be a $25 deductible to replace that. The second time a $50 deductible, and the third time a $100 deductible. But this would be something that a parent could choose. If a parent chose not to get insurance, there's no requirement to do that. However, if the child then were to break the Chromebook, then the cost of that replacement would be required. Just like with a library book or with a textbook that a student may use. If that textbook got damaged, there would be an expectation that the parent would cover it. And so Chromebooks are a little bit unique. We know we have students coming them home, so we do want to offer a little bit of peace of mind for our parents. But again, that would be optional for them to choose that insurance.
Now, it just says 6th through 8th. I understood from the last meeting that 4th graders and 5th graders would also now.
So at this point, we have 1-to-1 for our 4th graders and 5th graders, but they will not be taking them home every evening. Unless they're, for example, our blended students, or, you know, blended or online students.
Okay, so those within traditional will not take them home, but if they are virtual or blended, then
Correct.
they would, got it.
Yes.
Since we are talking about technology, Dan, a question for you. I know we talked about it at our last meeting. As far as students who might need internet service, where are we with that? I know we were talking about possibly some grants and things of that nature. What's the status of that for those who might need some coverage at home if they don't have internet service, if they're doing the virtual, any sort of virtual needs at home?
There is a database within the state that they started up during the pandemic, near the later part of the spring semester. And it offers information on costs of different options for families. But it even included things like, is there public Wi-Fi anywhere that someone could drive up to and find Wi-Fi?
Right, and of course now, I mean, for instance, you know, across the street from our school is the library, and they do have limited hours now, but there aren't too many public places now. But that's something that, is it the parents' responsibility, or are we trying to help them if they do ask?
We have some pricing on some options. You know, as we know that some of the companies offered free, or like, for example, Spectrum offered free internet for 60 days. That has passed. So families that wanted to continue would have to then basically be paying the online fee. There are some options with like Wi-Fi hotspots. Just got some pricing today on unlimited for families that would have difficulty, but that would certainly be a cost to the district if we were to invest in the Wi-Fi hotspots through a company like US Cellular or
Sure.
a provider.
I think at this point, you know, one of the things that we have kind of talked about is that if a family chooses the online option
Mhm.
now, in general, I'm assuming that they have access to online, or they would not likely
Sure.
choose that. If we were ever under a scenario again where we had to totally shut down
Right.
because of a healthcare order, then it certainly becomes much more complicated. But what we found the last time when we did that is that's when those companies kind of stepped up.
Okay.
And my hope would be if we end up with kind of a countywide or statewide order again, you would see potentially something like that happen. But certainly we'd have to, I mean, one of the aspects of this plan will be to work with our families on providing some sort of online access. Part of the problem with the hotspots is that they do provide internet access, but they're not great about streaming. And much of our platform requires, you know, the streaming. So even getting the hotspots in their hands may not address some of that kind of online streaming that family needs have.
Sure.
So.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yep. So again, that concept of, and we'll be sending clear information out, but the concept of allowing parents to choose that as an option, but there would not be a technology fee. The Springfield trip at this point, we're not going to collect for that at all because I think it's very unlikely we'll be taking our 8th graders on the Springfield trip this year. And we're holding off for a while on the graduation gown too, just trying to kind of see how things go and at what point do we actually have to make that decision on that. The art bag, we have moved away from, many of our families still have the classic kind of Salem art bag. The problem with that is it's not easily sanitized or cleaned, so we have found a larger kind of version that is much more easy to sanitize that we'll be supplying our students this next year. It's not nearly as attractive probably as the Salem, but it does have a blue zipper, so it does look kind of nice. The snack milk for our 4K and our 5K, there is no change there. The student breakfast we're not recommending a change there. For student lunch, we are recommending a 5-cent increase for that. Our reduced breakfast and reduced lunch, we're not recommending a change, but our milk kind of single a la carte sale, we're recommending a 5-cent increase for the milk going up to 40 cents. Again, most of those increases are required because of our lunch parity. Is that accurate, Susan?
When I completed the paid lunch equity tool, which we're required to do every year, to make sure we're in line with the prices that we're supposed to be charging, it tells you how much per year to increase. Now, previously, we've increased 10 cents per year to get up to align with the rest of the standards in Wisconsin. So now we are at only 5 cents, so $3.05 this year for lunch. Now with the milk, we're increasing it 5 cents because we currently pay 35 cents for a carton of milk. So we're actually losing money by selling it for the same amount that we're getting it for because it doesn't cover any, you know, handling costs, any shipping costs, anything like that, storage, etc.
The only other thing I'd add, you know, I had mentioned this at another board meeting, we're really, I mean, I'm very hopeful that the state actually or the federal government does step in and have some kind of programming around student lunch. I think one of the big issues for families is they talk about, do we choose the blended option, do we choose the online option? We are tentatively planning at this point to have an ability for families to drive through and pick up for lunches. For example, if you have an online student who's chosen online as their preference, we will still be able to, at least we're working through the ability to provide a once-a-week pickup for meals for that student. Unlike our present drive-through, where it's for any student, it would just be for our students. So the family would have to come through with a student ID to get that lunch. Likewise, with our blended students who may be here the 2 days, we can provide them the meals the other 3 days. So that would be our goal. And like I said, I'm very hopeful. There's certainly a lot of conversation around continuing some of the free lunch programs that we've been able to provide, but at this point, we haven't gotten an extension of that. So my recommendation would be to approve the 2020-2021 school fees as presented, with the understanding that, you know, if something changes, for example, and we're able to go skating, we'll be coming to parents at that point on that, and the same potentially for some of the other items.
I move to approve the 2021 school fees as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries.
So we have one of those other items, which is a statutory requirement that the board is required prior to the beginning of the school year to adopt the academic standards that they will be using in their instruction. There is actually required annual notice to be posted for our families, so that they have a actual kind of written notice that's been posted saying which standards we're using. As is very typical for the vast majority of districts. There's a lot more language on that statement, but the bottom line is that we do follow and use the Wisconsin Model Academic Standards for language arts and reading, math, social studies, science, and financial literacy. And again, these are statutory requirements related to that. I have included on there, but in the statement as well, which we've posted on our website, families can click on those links and it will take them to the DPI information about those model academic standards and what those actual standards are. So the recommendation would be to adopt the required annual notice of academic standards, again, the Wisconsin Model Academic Standards as presented.
A motion to adopt the required annual notice of academic standards, the Wisconsin Model Academic Standards as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries.
So the last action item I have on the agenda is a request to schedule a special board meeting. There are two reasons why we'll need that board meeting, one of which is we just got the updated required policies from Neola that the board will be required to update, and then a very significant one with Title IX as it relates to the Supreme Court changes in that law. So we'll need to have that actually approved, so submitted for board approval by August 14th. So my request would be that we set a special board meeting for the week of August 10th, 2020. I think it serves dual purpose, as there will be several items related to school reopening that I'm going to need to get approval on as well. So I would like the board to consider that. Later on this evening, I'll also be asking for a school policy committee meeting that we'll need to hold before this meeting, but that's why I've got it scheduled for that window. So the recommendation would be to set a special board meeting for the week of August 10th, 2020.
I feel like we're really good with Tuesdays.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna have that blocked off. Want to do like the
Should be
11th at 6 p.m.
I will be unable to attend the 10th through the 14th.
Okay, you're gone that whole week. Or you're unavailable that day.
Well, until the.
I can be here on the 11th, but I'll have to come in virtually. I mean, I'll be.
Okay. Jack,
My week is free.
what did you say?
Well,
I'm free that week.
He's free. Okay.
The 11th? Yep.
So the
Let's
only,
do 11th at
so
6 p.m.
where are we at in terms of numbers?
4.
4 to 5.
Okay, but, and then virtually, so we have, how many will we have here?
I will be here.
I'm gonna be here.
Okay, so, okay, is that?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
so 2 here, 2 virtual.
Right.
Okay, so just include that in the motion whenever anybody brings that.
You going to South America?
Huh?
You going to South America?
Are you serious?
No.
Oh.
I'm joking. I don't know why you said that. I know you're not going to Europe.
Send me pictures.
No.
Sorry.
Take my 1 week of vacay a year.
Sorry, strike that.
So,
Do you want to
should I?
make a motion?
Well, I'm not gonna be here, so I probably
Okay,
should.
I move to approve.
the special, setting a date for a special board meeting for August 11th, 2020 at 6 PM.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries, meeting set.
Did you say 6 PM?
6 PM.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to invite John from Dousman to join us to talk a little bit about the Dousman Transportation Contract. This is a contract that is set up to renew automatically, so it's a rolling contract that goes through the end of this school year. So I'm not actually asking you to approve this contract. It's automatically been approved back a couple of years back when it was approved. But I did want to talk a little bit about it, and then give you an opportunity to ask some questions as well.
Hi, John.
John, thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
So we're talking a little bit about the Dousman Transportation Contract, and I've shared with the board that it isn't something that needs to be approved this evening because it was approved a couple years ago. It does allow for a 3.5% increase, which is where we would be at for this next year, is my understanding. But I did want board members, because I think questions have come up, just an opportunity to ask some questions about, this year going forward. I've shared with them, because of the large number of students that we transport, the concept of providing social distance on our buses will be very difficult. We have talked about a requirement, and the board has approved a mandated mask requirement on the buses for our students. And we're also, kind of sharing with parents that concept that we're not going to be able to do or provide for social distance. But I guess one of the questions that I've heard our board members come up is just if you could kind of share with us some of the measures that are going to be implemented by Dousman to improve our overall student safety.
We've been trying to go to all of our districts and with their assistance and guidance, develop it. And thank you for your leadership there, Dr. Valens. Some of the things that we've discussed are siblings and others from the same household would be required to sit with each other. And I think we've kind of coalesced with most of our districts, including this one, for that rule. Students would board, right now, when students get on, they, more or less, the older students are to the rear and the younger students are in the front. However, we would ask you to consider that the students would all board and seat rear to front, regardless of age. That would not eliminate, but at least reduce some of the contact they would have with the other students on their way to their seating. And of course, they would deboard in the opposite manner.
How would that work with a bus now? How would they get on and off from?
Right
Or are
now.
you saying they walk all the way to the back?
Yeah, the first students that would board, say in the morning, would get on and walk all the way to the
Directly
rear.
to the back.
And then, of course, they would go back to front from there on out. When we reach the school to deboard, the students in the front would deboard, and they would shuffle in that. And that'll take some training, some teaching.
But in the past, though, they would just sit whatever they wanted as they got on, correct?
They would sit wherever they wanted, say in the first couple of weeks, and then they would settle in kind of, and then we would assign a seat.
Oh, you would, okay.
Yes. And we would then assign seats again this year. That'll be a little bit more difficult, probably a little bit more fluid. Because we don't know who is riding and maybe on what day, because there's a blended option. So there'll be a learning process there for all.
So we'll be working through a little bit. Obviously, one of the things that will be difficult for the bus company and us as well is we kind of have to delay a little bit thinking about how those buses are gonna look until we know what our parent options are, so that we can kind of take our kids who are blended and kind of split them between the days and figure out what the impact of that on busing is. I think one of the areas that we've talked a little bit different about in the district, and I don't know how this would work, but I think I've heard some concerns about the concept of if the kids are all automatically moving to the back, would you have a scenario where my 4K student is all of a sudden sitting with an 8th grade student, and I feel really uncomfortable with that. And so what we've talked a little bit about is maybe filling again from the back to the front, but maybe PK5 going to the one side unless they're siblings, and then 6, 7, 8 going to the other side, just kind of working through some of the logistics. The plan would be, however we kind of settle that out, would be to kind of do like a little video to send, you know, with the help of Dousman, to send to families to show them how they would board the bus and how they would seat on the bus, and then how they would dismount from the bus.
What's the current, prior to now, the 4K rule for general busing? So the 4K kids that do not take the 4K bus, so they are allowed to ride the bus if they have a sibling. So what's the rule on that? Does a sibling, so say it is an 8th grader with a 4K, does the 8th grader sit up front?
No.
There's,
No, the requirement or the kind of suggestion that they have a sibling is really so that they can get off at the regular stop and still have an older sibling to guide them.
so it has nothing to do with seating on the bus,
No.
so it is separate at that point? Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, no matter if you take that scenario of 5th, kindergarten, if you put the 8th grader in front, or if you're seating families together as they come on the bus, whatever that might be, I mean, how do you get around mixing with a middle schooler, an 8th grader or whatever, which nobody wants. I mean, nobody wants their young kid, you know, with.
Well, I think that's where we said, if it's a sibling, you would be sitting with your sibling, but if it's, that's why we talked a little bit about the 2 sides of the bus. It makes a lot of sense that the kids are loading from the front to the back, because if you think about as people
From the front to the back?
From the back to the front.
Yeah.
If you think about, so then the question becomes, well, what about as kids get on at night, for example? How do you do that? Because then, unless those are their assigned seats, they're gonna pass kids walking. But it's the amount of time that they're kind of crossing paths and walking, to the back of the bus while students are facing forward to try and kind of work through all of that. But remember also, we've shared that the expectation will be that our students are wearing masks. This will be different for our families. One of the things we haven't figured out exactly, and we're trying to kind of work through that, is in the past, our 4K students rode a separate bus, and it was because their hours were different. Based on that need to do the sanitizing in between and limit the number of transitions for kids, that's why we moved to that 2-day-a-week 4K, which will be different than we've done in the past. So we haven't quite figured out, are our 4K kids then going to ride with their brothers and sisters and other kids from the neighborhood, as the bus goes through? We haven't figured all of that out yet. Is it possible we still run separate buses for 4K? It's possible. Some of it's gonna depend on the numbers. I've even toyed with the idea of, would it be reasonable to do a 4K and 5K, kind of bus route, seen based on how many numbers of students that would be. But again, so much of this is gonna depend on how our parents choose.
Yes.
In terms of different options. And one of the questions we'll be asking our parents in that is, will they require transportation? And I'm hopeful that'll give us a little better idea as to the actual numbers of students.
I like it. I like that idea, and I'm sure the assigned seating will help as well. And I think also the masks are important, but also even as you board back to front, you're not going to have a group of same-age kids sitting together at any one time, and I think that's going to be beneficial as well. So maybe the interaction
interaction between the older kids and the younger kids aren't going to be that, it's not gonna be that big of a deal. But, yeah, so they're right, I mean, when they load at night, you're gonna have to have that same hierarchy in line to minimize that impact getting on.
Hopefully it'll become a habit.
Sure, sure.
So one of the things that I'm getting a lot of questions about is, because we're a tier 2 bus route, meaning there's another group of students in districts that use the buses before they come to us. And I've definitely heard concerns from our families about what happens between those 2 routes, to what extent. So, I mean, if you're cleaning the buses before, what happens then if, let's say, for example, we're talking about a quarantine situation, so a student from Central tests positive, so all the students on that bus end up being self-quarantined. Does that mean our kids then have to be self-quarantined? And all of those questions, as I talk with Kenosha County, is always, it depends. It depends on what happened in between. It depends on, those types of things. But I think it'd be helpful to know from you. One of the things we're looking at doing is delaying our start time here at Salem by about 15 minutes, so that we would bring in our parent drop-off families and that earlier, and then our bus students would come in after that to help bring the kids into the building, which might leave a little bit of time in between to kind of wipe down the buses if the need is there. I don't know how that works at night. I don't know if you could kind of address that.
In the morning, we have a little bit more time between the routes, and I would say that most have 10 minutes between the routes in the morning to do maybe that task. In the afternoon, because the districts prior have a little bit longer day, the window that we have to finish the tier 1 school duty is shorter. So as soon as we drop off our last student from the first school, we're making tracks back here, and we're very lucky that we have some patient staff members, because if we're delayed in any way, it's usually translates to a delay for our arrival. So both if we had an extension, if we had say 15 minutes in the morning longer, we wouldn't necessarily need it, at least for my judgment right now. We wouldn't necessarily need it for that. However, it would extend the day for the hours for all of our employees. And that, of course, having your own staff, that adds up pretty quickly. 15 minutes at a time, an hour a week, or whatever it is.
Well, I think we have to look at it from a safety perspective.
Sure.
So if we're only talking about 15 minutes, what's the right thing to do when we're coming with kids? Okay, so we don't sanitize the buses in between the routes, and then that bus becomes exposed to the virus in the whole, and then you're talking about no business at all. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something significant. If we can't ensure some type of that we're not taking care of what we can take care of. That's an easy measure, I think, to sanitize the bus in between routes to ensure safety of the kids in transportation. I think it's worth a conversation. It's this. We're not asking for an hour or 2 hours. We're asking for a wipe down of a bus in between. Let's just say there's one person that tests positive on that bus route. How many people would that infect, and what would that happen to the rest of the routes? I think it's worth a conversation.
So you were talking about 10 minutes, so realistically, how long would it take?
We think if
beyond 10 minutes to do it So these conditions could be taken care of if you needed to.
We're testing that as we speak,
Okay.
finding the right product, because a lot of these products, you have to apply and wait.
Yeah.
So now, we're testing some products that are instant or within a minute, so you could, say, spray down those areas that are mostly touched. Be the tops of the seats,
Mhm.
the entryway, the handholds, and that sort of thing. We think if we can find the right product, it would probably be around 10 minutes to do, to finish that task. The
Yeah,
average
so-
person.
I
Not,
guess what I
not
was-
significant.
And I guess what I'm assuming though is that what I heard was that you would be cleaning the buses down either the evening or the morning before the first tier buses left, correct?
They would actually, we're still developing that with the rest of our school partners. But we would normally clean, say, do a full disinfection, and a full disinfection would mean that you're gonna saturate all surfaces, and you're going to actually let it sit and evaporate. We would do that immediately after morning routes, and then depending on whatever plan we adopt, it would also be done after PM routes. Of course, doing a full saturation kind of cleaning, that's not possible, say, in between the duties of the tier 1 and tier 2.
So are you saying that the students at Salem Grade School will not have the same kind of clean bus that the Central kids will have?
No, I'm saying that it's impossible to do a top to bottom within the time frame that we would have. Would it be reasonably safe? Yeah, we think we can.
And reasonably safe is what exactly?
I mean that all the common areas that most people would touch, that we would disinfect.
Because I'll say, as, you know, obviously the tax base constituents, number one question was, what are we doing about going back to school? The immediate number two question was busing, in almost the priority order. And right now, we got a lot of people watching this right now, trying to determine how they're going to transfer, 75%, I mean, we just went through this, about 45 minutes ago, 75% of our student base, 700 plus students, which I think we're at,
770.
yeah, we're at what, 1,100 students or 1,000 students?
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of children to be moved, right? And I think, these parents, regardless if they're 4 days a week here, 2 days a week, or total online doesn't necessarily matter at this point as far as transportation of students. They want some clear-cut answers about this, because we are the ones that they're gonna yell at if things aren't done to their satisfaction. And at this point, we have to rely on you as a business to make sure that we can give the right answers, and we're gonna really, really be pushing for us to have the equal treatment that other school districts certainly have for the same amount of transportation. And I understand that it might take a little bit
And
more
the
time.
same cost.
Well, I'll just say this, I look at this and we're getting a 3.5% increase year over year that we approved. You talk about extra, it takes a little bit extra for the staff and things like that, and we'll accommodate as much as we can. If we gotta give you more time, and we gotta adjust school time, if we gotta do that to make sure our kids have a safe environment, that's our job as a board to figure that out. Your job as a transportation company is to make sure that we can go to the parents of these students and say that we got your back and we made sure that these buses are sanitary up to the level of expectation for everybody in the district, including people in the area too, including Central in that range, because, we all live in the same area. So I just expect the same kind of care and attention to detail and sanitation that, our other districts in the area have, period.
Well said, Dick.
Oh, there's another board member remote.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, I just wanted to put that out there. Like I said, there's a lot of people watching this right now, and this was aside from opening up a school, this was number 2 question on almost every parent's mind.
There are a lot of practical challenges and.
Oh, yeah.
And.
Run a school district, you
Yeah.
know?
So
You bet.
Connie, what do you think then on the back end of school, what kind of accommodations 10 minutes would make to making sure the buses have been sanitized properly, or whatever that time might be from tier 1 to tier 2, in between that cleaning? And like, how would we accommodate time-wise? Like, what would that look like?
Well, so, one of the conversations we've had is, could we start a few minutes later? So, initially, I think we talked about starting around 10 minutes later, even up to 15 minutes later, if that's what it would take to be able to clean the buses in between and get them, to pick up with our students. On the far end, I've already talked with Central. Central is willing to dismiss about 7 minutes earlier, I think, than they have in the past. I haven't gotten confirmation from Bristol yet. I'll be asking, because those are the 2 tier 1 districts that share buses with us, is my understanding. If they could kind of push back their, because we're not impacting their starting time, but could they push back their dismissal by, maybe 7 minutes like Central is doing? That would be helpful to us. But I think one of I guess the questions is that I kind of hear this, well, it's going to cost more because our drivers are going to need to put in more time. But I also feel like clearly that amount of time that you're putting into clearing is benefiting Bristol, it is benefiting Central.
Yeah.
And they're not, I don't think, paying additional for that time. So it just seems kind of not just that we then end up paying additional because we need that time to get our buses cleaned in between.
No, I think that's fair, and it's something that I haven't spoken to everybody about, but I think your point is a fair one.
Yeah, this is new ground for everybody. There's a cost of doing business to being safe and sanitary. And, if it's an extra 10 minutes or whatever it might be, but the safety of the students are what's foremost. And, yeah, we have to do what we can, move schedules, whatever that is, to do the right thing.
If I could add something, it's obvious that the board and the school are going above and beyond to try to make this school work and make the year a good and safe one for the students. We hope that our partners feel the same way.
No, I've been very impressed with everything that I've seen tonight and my interaction with Dr. Lorenza.
So when should we check back with you?
Well, I think
So first of all, I would say, I'm pretty sure on Thursday, we actually have a meeting with other districts around busing. I'm hopeful to be able to attend that meeting. I do have some online training that I'm committed to, but I know that that's another conversation. When we have our student numbers, that's going to be a big conversation then, and I'm going to pull those together as fast as I can to kind of look at some of them. One of the conversations that we already had was the ability to add additional bus routes. For example, if we wanted to get our numbers down a little bit. And I understand that that's a big challenge, mainly because of the struggle to find drivers. And I understand and I respect that. I do know, again, that question around, do we run separate 4K buses? If we don't run separate 4K buses, we did have the 2 4K buses in the morning, so that could potentially create some capacity to, if we have areas where we have very condensed student, to maybe run, some additional routes that way. But until we know those numbers, it's really hard to kind of talk about that piece. So I understand that we're asking a lot to say, we may not know exactly who's riding buses for a while, and so any of the kind of organizing and power that we can provide and help and assistance in getting those bus routes figured out and sharing with families how the bus loading will occur and those kind of things we'll be doing. I think, and I guess I just want to at least be able to have a conversation because I want to be upfront with the board on that. One of the real unique things around our programming is the fact that we will not be having school on Wednesday. And I just want to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page as to what that means from our bus contract perspective.
Yeah, and I wanted to address that in two other things. I see on the list there, additional COVID-19 related costs, and when I see that, I get a little nervous, because I see that in addition to the 3.5% increase, and because we're all aware of the 75% that we had to pay from last year's because of the shutdown, and who knows what's going to happen this coming year, and also charges for days when school is not in session. And as a board, we're responsible to our community as well as to our students and staff for education. But like you know, you're running a business and we're running a school district and responsible for education and the community and our budget as well. So can you talk briefly about potential or when you talk about additional COVID-19 related costs, if we're talking about adding another 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes to that 10 minutes to sanitize the buses, are you going to be charging us another 18%?
Well, I wouldn't say.
No, I mean, I'm being sarcastic
Yeah.
here. I just want to know,
Okay.
are you then going to be charging us more money if you're going to be sanitizing the buses so they're sanitized and they're clean, because we're concerned about the health and welfare of our students?
Sanitizing the buses is going to be a big project. If you were to do even 10 minutes, 4 times a day, and times the number of buses that we have or the number of buses that you run. But of course that would be shared with your partner school. As an open-ended question, yeah, we would need some support on that. We would be asking for some of that, some support on that.
Knowing that we are providing a 3.5 increase and you will not be providing services on Wednesday.
Well, we wouldn't be providing services on Wednesday, however, all of our overhead remains, except for, say, fuel and driver costs.
Right, and we're aware of that because of last year, because of the shutdown.
Yeah, and
which we had to pay, which we're responsible for to our taxpayers.
we appreciate it. We appreciate the support. Without that support, a business wouldn't exist. It would cease to be. And if this were to happen again, and God forbid, and it happened, we didn't get, the industry didn't get support, the industry itself would crumble. There's just so much asset there to support and capability to support and that sort of thing. So yeah, for even the Wednesday that we aren't running, we're budgeted over, a number of days, 170, 175, 180 days, depending on how many you're normally scheduled. And that's the way we're costed out.
So are you looking to defer some of the cost? Well, so it sounds like you're looking to defer some cost out to your school partners. However, is Dowsman going to be absorbing any of that cost, just like we're obviously going to be absorbing, or are you automatically putting that charge onto us as a school district?
No, we would like to work with the schools. We're just trying to not take it all on ourselves. As an open-ended thing, I just don't know if we would be able to sustain it.
And with that being said, will there be some transparency on that costs? And obviously this is using taxpayer money, and they'd probably like to see those figures to some degree, given the fact that we're spending the money from the tax revenues that we generate in. So will there be some transparency on those true costs to us as far as product and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's understandable. We do not, we don't plan on making a penny off of this.
Oh, I'm just,
As a
I'm
matter of fact, it's
anticipating
gonna
questions
cost us
coming to me
some,
from other people.
and, yeah, so, yeah,
Okay.
we
I
will
guess
do that.
my expectation is, given an unforeseen future and a very volatile present, with a 3.5% increase on a contract without 1 day of work, lower fuel costs, I don't even know what the insurance component is, that, again, I have to go back to the cost of business in this area, and you're talking about minor changes to ensure some safety on your buses. I guess my expectation would be not to incur those costs directly for, specifically sanitizing. I don't, you're looking at me funny.
No, not you, that was not my intention. This is really confusing, as I think if just take a hot second to think of it from everybody in this room's perspective. We're now on almost the third hour of the meeting, being completely transparent with the families out there that are trying to make decisions. Hypothetically speaking, if we would be 100% virtual, this contract would be null and void because we don't have anything to transport. So if I can summarize what we may all be thinking is, why aren't you providing us with what you are going to do for us, knowing that we are having a plan to provide you with product, not to call students product, but if we're talking from a business perspective. Does that make sense?
Well, I too wouldn't call it product, but.
Well, it's revenue.
But,
However.
but if you're a business and we're a school, right? So you're looking at it from a business perspective.
We wanna serve you the way you wanna be served, and that's why I've tried to bring to the district some of the things that we can offer. However, there might be challenges that go along with that, and I should be upfront about those also.
Everybody in this room is hyper aware of challenges. So we're on the same page here. What I would request is come back to us, maybe at a different meeting or whatever date we just sent, and you present to us what you are going to do for the money that we pay. You get that when you order something at Noodles and Company, you get that when you're going to South America. I mean, that's corporate America, right? So I think our frustration right here, if I may speak to my own frustration, is you tell me what you're gonna do, and we will approve that. But coming and saying, I'm increasing this 3.5, we're looking at it like we're giving you a hot break on Wednesdays, come to us with how you are going to make our experience just as good as Central and Bristol's. And if that requires you needing 10 more minutes, then we will have the conversation. Does that make sense?
Fair enough. I would like to polish the plan a bit.
You have access to Connie, you have access to our staff.
Yeah.
Connie, do you have anything else?
No, I think it's just, I think this time, we had multiple meetings over trying to resolve some things at the end of the last year. And I distinctly remember sitting in on those meetings and conversations, and I guess I just would like us to come kind of to an agreement as to what it will look like this next year, so that we're not kind of reliving it, we have an idea and a plan going into the school year. So I appreciate that, and we'll continue to work together to try and come to resolution on some of those things. So, anything else? Thank you so much for coming.
Sure, thank you.
Appreciate it. just a little bit of an information update. This is also a time, again, of an amendment in agreement update on our food service contract. This again is a multi-year contract, so you don't have to approve the contract. But I'm gonna let Susan share a little bit about the overall update to the contract.
For our 2019-20 contract, it included a 2.5% increase, which was the maximum cost of living allowed by DPI. However, during the year, we needed an additional cashier, so then we paid, in addition to the regular contract, we paid out about $13,000 for that additional cashier to help the students get through the lines faster so they had more time to eat. This year, when I went to have that approved by DPI, they said, no, you can't have an additional contract, but the maximum is a 2.8% increase. So factoring in the amount that the cashier would cost us, getting the 2.8% was better than doing the 2.5% with the additional cashier. So Arbor agreed the 2.8% is fine, and they actually only get paid the 2.8% on the product that they deliver. So it's not like we're paying for things they're not doing.
Okay, so maybe you lost me in translation, but are we having the additional cashier? Because I would assume that we would not, based on less people.
As far as I understand, we don't need a cashier at the current time. It depends on how lunch goes, because there are going to be additional spots that they need to serve in. So they may need an additional person, but not necessarily additional cashier.
So one of the things about our lunch plan, if you recall, is we're gonna be serving in multiple different areas and then within classrooms as well. So I think what I'm hearing is that at this point, the cost is built in for the cashier. That cashier may not end up being a cashier. They may be helping to distribute meals in other ways.
It's just a head count.
So another body is needed.
Yes.
We don't know what they're doing yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, and we're only gonna pay them for what they produce anyway. So.
Right, and because lunches are grab and go now, right?
Correct, but they have to be delivered to
Right.
the actual area that they're going to be eating.
Right, okay.
And I just wanted to mention really quick, the emergency food program was initiated 3/17/20. We started actually supplying it to the parents on the 19th. And that was through the USDA summer food program. And they originally only had it through June, and it got extended, and now it's through the end of August, and Salem has agreed to do it through the end of August to provide the meals for anyone 18 years old or younger in our district and surrounding districts. So through March through June, we've served 37,526 meals.
Oh my, that's great.
And that's including summer program?
This is through the summer food program only.
Okay.
Which, the way USDA has it set up is you don't have to have, it's non-congregate feeding, so they can actually grab and go. You can be flexible on the meal pattern, but they prefer you follow the meal pattern, which includes all of your, milk, bread, proteins, things like that. But they will be flexible if you run out of things or cannot order them. Some of the districts had difficult time getting milk or getting meats or things like that. And the biggest thing they did during the summer food program was allow everyone to come and pick up meals for free. That they have not extended that. They've extended every single waiver that they have, allowing parents to come pick up the food without the children present, not having to sign in, not having to register it under your student's name, free meals. The only thing they haven't approved for the coming school year, 2021 school year, is to have the free meals. And they still are requiring that each student be counted as they acquire a meal. So as of today,
Would you
that-
anticipate that changing?
I'm thinking there's a big push. There's a big push for the USDA to go back to funding the meals for the students because so many
Every
schools,
student.
yes, so many schools are, going completely virtual. So they can still record when the student comes and picks up a meal. However, that's the main reason they made it free to everyone for the summer food program is because it was so difficult to track down all these kids. And they wanted to make sure all of the students in the area, since we live in a low-income area, over 50% of our community is low income, they wanted to make sure every student in the community was fed.
Okay, so it's a possibility to almost continue the summer program to include virtual people, if they pass this.
If they pass it,
Then
then
it
it
can
would
be.
include everybody that it does now.
So right now, you can
Right.
pick up a meal for any child under the age of 18. Could be a 2-year-old child, it could be a Salem student, it could be a student from another district.
Mhm.
You simply pull up and get that. So there's really a couple different forces at work here, one of which is, of course, the school lunch program, but the USDA plays a major role in this as well. And as you can imagine, with all of the restaurant closures and that type of
Mhm.
thing, it's had a significant impact on farm prices and the markets for our farm communities. And so the reason for some of these programs is dual, one of which is to provide the food for families that have a need, but also to provide a market for those farm products that have struggled because of restaurants being closed and schools being closed and all of those types of things.
Great point.
As many more school districts make that choice to go full online, and as you see kind of the continued closure around restaurants and that, I'm hopeful that that will kind of push the USDA to look at more of a school kind of lunch program as well. It just has not happened yet. So, hopefully.
And just to put a plug in, we are still serving meals Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. So you can come and pick up multiple days worth of meals on those days.
Plus, we're still handing out free gallons of milk for families that come through and need it. So,
From your farm?
from my family's farm, yes, but it's through the USDA.
I know.
So there's no,
I know.
not a conflict of interest in any way.
I know that.
It's just the connection. All right, so some of the maintenance projects. Susan or Steve, I'm not sure who's going to present on those.
I'm gonna let Steve present, but however, the main reason this came up is because, one, we wanna feature what our maintenance, department has been doing along this time. But also, I've actually had some parents ask me, what is maintenance doing? You know, shouldn't everybody be laid off? You know, you've got nothing left to do at the school if the kids aren't there. So I wanted to showcase exactly what maintenance, department has been doing during the shutdown and throughout the entire 2019-20 school year.
So this is just some of the things we've done. We've had a little extra time, obviously. We found this Falcon. It was removed from the building in probably 10 years ago, and it was stored. I found it in the storage room, so we just put it back on the front of the building.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, sure does.
Really does. Where'd you find it, by the way?
I think it was in what is now my office on the floor. We've done a lot of COVID-related preparations. We've changed out almost every faucet in the building now to a touchless faucet. We removed all the push-button faucets should all be gone before the reopening. They're all touchless faucets now. We've replaced most of the, we shut off all of the bubblers, and I installed a bottle fill station in each section of the building. We have one more coming, but we should have one in every section, every hallway before we open. The bubblers are completely shut down. We've shut down all of the hand dryers in the bathroom and installed touchless paper towel dispensers also. I got some hand sanitizer stations coming, so we can have a standalone hand sanitizer station at each of the main entries and each of the office areas. These are more just extra things that we've had to do that aren't COVID related, but just some of the things that have happened over the last year. We painted the door frames and the old lockers and the vents and the vanities in the 4th and 5th grade. The water issues, this was a major water issue we had, and the water softeners were dumping into a tunnel that was under the south pump room, and they had to break up the floor to replace a pipe, so we got a new closet, a new custodial closet out of the deal, because I had them install a sink in the top picture there. That's the new custodial closet. The water softener now dumps into the sink rather than into the tunnel under the 4th grade hallway. And we got a new water heater that feeds that bathroom and the new closet. These were two of the major water issues that we had talked about last time. These are two separate closets. The bottom picture is in the 5th grade section. It also has a new sink. We had to break out the floor and replace the drain in the floor because it wasn't working at all. So we got two new closets out of the deal. We had to replace a moldy wall from the leak, but it's all dry and convenient and working very well. Those are some of the bottle fill stations that I talked about. We replaced the tops of the lockers that were all bent and broken, and installed some landscaping rocks on the south side, I guess, where we had perpetual mud from all the salt that would come off the sidewalks and get into the grass. So we were never gonna grow grass there, so we put in some rocks that eliminate the mud and pretty it up a little bit. We painted the south gym, and we basically revamped the south gym. We got a new paint job, the bleachers got rebuilt, the stage got refinished, we got new curtains, we painted a falcon on the back wall, we fixed the scoreboard.
That's why we're having lunch there, so the kids can see how lovely it looks.
Yeah. Yeah. But it came out really nice. We reupholstered the mats on the walls and stripped and waxed the floor. It really looks good in there now.
Looks great.
I think I talked a little bit about that already. Those are just a couple of I bought a falcon stencil, and we painted some falcons around the building and just prettied it up a little bit.
Made it fun.
So I will say, I'm pretty sure that every time Steve hears my steps coming up, he probably looks for something really big to do and get out of the office. But the maintenance crew, and Steve especially, has been amazing as we've tried to work through all of these issues. I'll walk up there and I'll say, well, what if we did this? And I could just tell by the look on his face that it's kind of like, sure, we'll get to that. But he's always come through for me and has been very flexible and building and student focused and cost focused, and I really appreciate that.
Oh,
Thank
looks
you.
great, Steve, thank you.
We're creating a new science lab also.
Oh, that's right.
We're gonna tile one of the classrooms and put in a new science sink and have a new science lab before we open.
That's great, Mom, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve.
Just a little bit, real quick, I know it's getting late, just kind of some updates on 2021 planning. Again, our leadership team meeting, we've been meeting lots to try and work through some of the logistics. The immediate step, obviously, after approval is to get those parent choices and begin rescheduling all of our students. We're gathering information from our staff related to their professional development needs. And then kind of co-developing plans based on that information, again, with the focus on their needs, not kind of what we're kind of trying to get them to absorb or do right now. A lot of time on school entry and exit plans, how we're gonna handle that all. Working through space, time, and staffing resources with a focus on our student needs. Continue improving access to technology across all 3 platforms based on what parents may choose. Developing plans to address academic gaps that existed before and have been exacerbated by the COVID-19. Developing plans to share information on healthy behaviors with families and teaching students healthy behaviors. Developing plans to provide social emotional support for our staff, for our students, and for our families. Developing plans to address positive test results of students and staff if they should occur. Developing kind of our health office plans and responses and protocols. Continued engagement with Kenosha County Health Department and some of the local regional schools, and I end a little tongue-in-cheek with right now, we don't know what we don't know, so there's still a lot to kind of work through and issues that come up every day as we kind of try and navigate through them. But just giving you an update that we're still, working diligently to try and make this all happen. We don't have administrator reports on the agenda tonight because we've been working so closely on our plans. What you've gotten from us this evening were our administrator reports. Committee reports, there are none. However, I do need to request a committee meeting for policy and community relations. I'm going to toss out the 5th or 6th because remember we would need to hold that meeting prior to the next week. And I think it's Steve and Jack are on policy.
Yes.
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 Yeah, the 5th or 6th, either works for me.
I'm gonna be out of town, so I'd have to do it remotely.
Okay. That's.
Yeah, it might be, I might have to send you a whole bunch of documents before, to take a look at, but then I think it could work from there.
Okay.
I'll just share with you that, for example, that Title IX has about 2,000 pages. I'm not expecting that you would read all through that, but there is a lot of kind of information that we'll need to kind of address going forward. So just an FYI on that one.
I'll have Steve read it to me.
Okay, very good. And yeah, and you can play the trumpet while I'm doing that, right?
So I'll send out separately to the 2 of you to see which of those times or dates works the best.
Yeah, and Madam President, as we were having the discussion about transportation, and obviously we're all concerned about all the committees and everything we do as a board, but I was just thinking, in fact, if Nick would hold up a little note, I just sent him I shifted a little note to him. I'm just wondering, with all, I know we have a lot of committees and stuff, but I'm just thinking, if we, as a board, if we want to consider the possibility of having a transportation committee, a separate committee. I know we talk about it as a board or whether we need another committee, but it's just something, especially now with so many issues, and I know the administration, they deal with it, they talk about it, but whether it's something that at least we might want to consider in the future, because I know it's something that's, especially now, it's just something that it's really an issue, because we had some really concerning questions, and I would suspect that there will be a lot of comments and questions from our parents, and we had upwards of 70 people at one point watching and listening tonight, and it's just an idea I want to throw out.
Yeah, I would kind of second that idea. I know we've made committees about food, with Arbor and all that stuff, and
you know, obviously food's important, but I think this is, you know, with 75% of our student base, and it's not, we know none of us wanna be in more meetings, but
Right.
this is certainly something that is becoming more pressing, almost alarmingly, I would say, that we need to start really putting some focus power on probably.
So that
So
kind
I
of
think
that
the only thing I would mention is, unfortunately, we had really talked about trying to have kind of a board retreat to really
Right.
talk about what those committees were and what the
Sure.
role is and which committees should we have, and I think it's a good conversation that we need to have.
Sure.
There's just been so much around reopening that have kind of held that off.
Sure, and maybe it could be combined with some existing committee or something, but, you know, and the discussions we had, I mean, you know, obviously, transportation with, you know, 772 of our students, at least the students that we know we have at this moment, you know, are requiring transportation, or at least we think they are. And that's a huge percentage for any district. Yeah, I don't care where it is, so I think it's something that we might at least wanna talk about, I think.
So that, you mentioned a Thursday meeting, is that Central, Bristol, and us in one transportation meeting?
It's all of the district administrators in those areas, including Central Bristol, but it also includes,
Okay,
Wilmot and
so
some of those.
it's not specifically talking about busing will just be an agenda item?
No, it will be specifically talking about busing, but it won't just be Central Bristol and Salem. It'll be that whole Westosha, so you'll have also Wilmot and the districts that feed into that use Dousman, but it's an actual meeting with Dousman.
So, would it be possible to have one or two of us on that call so we can even just be silent observers?
I guess at this point, it's just a district administrator, so short of putting out to the district administrators, do they wanna bring someone to that meeting? I would
Right.
say probably not. But I can certainly report back on that particular meeting, cause I know many of the districts have some of the same concerns that were
Can you
mentioned.
be at that meeting?
I will be,
You will be
yes.
there, okay.
Well, Judith, can I be at that meeting?
The meeting sounds like a good idea.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will be at that meeting. I'm laughing with Judith because we're in a training, on Thursday that goes throughout the day.
Yeah, and you know, the issue with the busing, obviously, because we're sharing buses with other districts and we're dealing with, you know, a company that's providing the busing, that, you know, and you know, obviously we have concerns about that, but, you know, it's just something, you know, our questions, you know, we're very pointed and very, very specific questions that we have. And it's not just the money, I mean, money is important, but it's the safety, and that's absolutely essential, that we're always concerned about, all of us, as teachers, as administrators, and as board members, and our community, and our parents. And
Well,
the
he made a
students.
point that he was impressed with the hard work we had done, and, you know, I would like to be in a position where I could be just as impressed with him.
And I think, you know, I think that they have been working hard, they've been meeting with the district leaders to try and work through, and I think they're very legitimate questions on our end. I'm sure, like we do, they're scrambling to try and figure out how to best kind of navigate this new world that everybody's living in and deliver everybody safely within the financial constraints that
Sure.
all of us have. But I will, you know, like I said, I'll be at that meeting. I'll keep bringing back information related to the overall transportation. I have, you know, kind of suggested that concept of like an operations committee that deals with this kind of nuts and bolts operational issues like transportation and that kind of thing. But certainly I think we need to, if things ever settle down a little bit, it would be really good for the board and myself, obviously, to sit down and just talk about those, what is the role and purpose of committees, and what are the kind of committees
Sure.
that we should have. So,
And I know we were supposed to have that this month,
Yep.
but,
I know, this has
obviously,
been,
it's a non-issue, right?
It'll
So-
be a fluid document.
Yes,
Yep.
so, what if you keep us informed,
I
and
will.
then you and I can touch base, and if we need some sort of emergency special meeting, say next week, because I don't think we know how long, John, how
John.
long it would take
Yeah.
him to come back either.
Sure.
And if the board, or if the 11th is too far away, then let's obviously go for that.
Okay. So then, just a reminder, we already scheduled our special board meeting earlier. And then our next regular school board meeting won't be until Tuesday, August 25th, 2020 at 7 p.m. That's why that need for that meeting in between. So that's all I have.
Yeah, and I know we've all said it to all the administrators and the teachers and everyone, all staff, just what a great job everyone is doing. And I'm just saying is I want everyone to know, especially everyone who's watching, just what a tremendous job everyone is doing. Just
Agreed.
outstanding.
Thank you to all who attended. I move to adjourn the meeting at 9:26 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.